Hi everyone, this is Diggsman and welcome to my YouTube channel. Our lesson for this tutorial video is about trigonometric functions and the different approaches to calculate or solve for the values of those functions. So, one common approach that we will encounter here is the use of the unit circle. Before we begin, if you haven't subscribed yet, please click the button and subscribe because I upload different lecture videos weekly. So, for today's tutorial video, let's begin. Before we start to discuss and for the trigonometric function, we already know that degrees is the unit measurement for the angle. But there are other ways of measurement that can define the angle. Yung tinatawag natin as the radians and revolution. And for this topic, it is important that we know how to convert degrees to radians or degrees to revolutions, the conversion of the three. Okay? So we have the conversion factors. And from revolution to degrees, we have 1 revolution is equal to 360 degrees. Again, for revolution and radians, we have 1 revolution is equal to 2 pi radians. And if we are converting the angle from radian to degrees, we can use the pi radians is equal to 180 degrees. So, para may apply natin, let's take example number 1. For example number 1, convert the following angles from degrees to radians and revolution. So, paano yan? Ang una natin gagawin, i-convert muna natin lahat ng angle from degrees to radians muna. So, from degrees to radians. Yan. First angle, we have 60 degrees. Now, kung i-convert natin yun, gagamitin natin yung conversion factor from degrees to radians. And we have the conversion factor na pi radians over 180 degrees. And to convert, ika-cancel lang natin ito. Cancel, cancel. And now, we have 60 over 180. So, if we simplify this, the fraction 60 over 180, ang kakalabasan natin, we have 1 over 3. 1 over 3 pi radians, or simply we have pi over 3 radians. So, ito na po yung conversion yung conversion niya from degrees to radians. Next, we have 150 degrees. For 150 degrees, ganun lang din ang gagawin natin. We have pi radians, or simply rads na lang if we abbreviate it, over 180 degrees. Now, we can cancel the degrees so that ang matitira is yung radians. 150 over 180, if we simplify it, we have 5 over 6 pi radians, or simply we can rewrite this as 5 pi over 6 radians. Ayan. Now, for the third angle, we have negative 45 degrees. Same process. Pi radians over 180 degrees. So, we can cancel the degrees, and by simplifying, we have 45 over 180. So, ilan yan? Magiging 1/4 na lang. Negative 1/4. Negative 1/4 pi radians. So, ito na po yung ating conversion for the negative 45 degrees. Convert natin into radians. And for the fourth example, the 90 degrees, same process. We have pi radians over 180 degrees, so cancel the degrees. Ang matitira is radians. Now, 90 over 180, by simplifying, 1/2 po yun. We have 1/2 pi radians. And for the last angle, we have 107 degrees. So, 107 degrees times the conversion factor of pi radians over 180 degrees is equal to, now by simplifying 107 over 180, hindi na natin siya pwedeng simplify into lowest term kasi siya na mismo yung lowest term. Yun na lang ilalagay natin. We have 107 over 180 pi radians. Ito na yung mismong answer natin kasi we cannot simplify it anymore into lowest term. So, ito po yung ating conversion from degrees to radians. And kung i-convert lang natin from radians to degrees naman, babalik rin lang natin yung conversion factor natin so that makakancel natin yung pi radians. So, that's for degrees to radians. Now, for the conversion naman for radians to revolution. So, let's start again with the angle 60 degrees. For 60 degrees, we will use the conversion factor 1 revolution over 360 degrees. So, again, we just simplify it. We cancel first the degrees na unit natin and then simplify 60 over 360 is 1 over 6 revolution. So, ito na po mismo yung ating answer. Converting the 60 degrees into revolutions. Next, for 150 degrees. Same process, 1 revolution over 360 degrees, cancel the unit. 150 over 360 by simplifying, we get 5 over 12 revolutions. This is our second angle. And for the third angle, we have negative 45 degrees. Conversion factor, we have 1 revolution over 360 degrees is equal to 45 over 360. By simplifying, we get 1 over 8. And of course, the negative sign. Kasi, pag nagkakaroon tayo mga negative angle, again, from the previous topic, pag clockwise yung pag-ikot ng kanyang terminal side. So we have negative 1 over 8 revolutions. And for the fourth angle, the 90 degrees, multiplied by the conversion factor, we have 1 revolution, same process, over 360 degrees. So cancel. 90 over 360, by simplifying, we have 1 over 4 revolution. This is the answer. And now for the last angle, we have the angle 107 degrees. Multiply into the conversion factor 1 revolution over 360 degrees. So cancel the unit and then simplify. 107 over 360 is the lowest term na mismo. So we just copy it. We have 107 over 360 revolutions. Or if you want to make it to decimal, kayo na po yung bahala. But since we are in fraction terms, 107 over 360 revolutions is the final answer. So that's for the conversion from degrees to revolution. A triangle in which one angle is a right angle is called a right triangle. So, whenever we see a triangle and one of the corners is 90 degrees yung kanyang measurement, tinatawag natin yun as a right triangle. So, this figure, as you can see, is one example of a right triangle kasi yung kanyang isang corner ay 90 degrees. And if we recall, this side, tinatawag natin as the hypotenuse. Ayan. And itong dalawa naman, tinatawag natin as the leg. So, yan yung part ng right triangle. Meron tayong tinatawag na Pythagorean theorem. So, Pythagorean theorem, it says that c square is equal to a square plus b square. So, tuwing kailan ba natin dapat gamitin itong relationship na to? Whenever, dun sa right triangle natin, pagka meron tayong missing value. Let's say, for example, unknown c hypotenuse or yung unknown si c. So, we use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for any of the side. Kung kulang ng isang leg, we use the Pythagorean theorem. Kung kulang ng isa pang leg, ganun lang din ang gagawin natin. And if we look at this right triangle natin, meron tayong 6 na ratio na mabubuo. Ito yan. So, we have b over c. Ito yan, b over c, a over c, B over A, C over B, C over A, and finally, we have A over B. So, yung ratio na yan, hindi yan nababago. These ratios depend only on the size of the angle, theta, and not on the triangle formed. Any two right triangles formed using the angle theta will be similar and hence corresponding ratios will be equal. For a better explanation, let's take a look with this three angles. So, from the previous tutorial video, this one we call as the initial side. And ito yung tinatawag natin na terminal side. And this is the vertex. Now, considering this is an acute angle, yan. And now, dito naman tayo sa second angle natin. If we form this as a right triangle, ayan, right triangle kasi this is 90 degrees. So, we don't have to write 90 degrees na lang. Instead, ang sulat na lang natin, or ang draw na lang natin is simply this small square here. Siya na yung magsasabi na yung triangle na yun ay right triangle. Yung ratios natin, yung 6 na ratio kanina ay hindi nakadepende dun sa laki or dun sa haba ng dimensions ng triangle natin, but nakadepende siya dun sa size ng angle natin. For example, this is another right triangle. And this is our theta. Now, this is the C, or the hypotenuse, A and B. If we draw another right triangle, pero same lang din ang angle, ito siya. And we label this right triangle na we have C prime, this is B prime, and this is A prime. Kahit lumaki man yung dimensions ng ating right triangle, basta yung kanilang angle ay iisa, ibig sabihin, pwede natin silang i-consider as similar triangles and yung ratio natin hindi yan mag-iiba. Pareho lang siya ng magiging value. So, we have B over C as B prime over C prime, pareho lang siya. And A over C is equal to A prime over C prime all the way to A over B is equal to A prime over B prime. Again, the point here is, hindi magbabago yung ratio natin kung hindi magbabago yung angle nila. Hindi nakadepende yung ating ratio sa dimensions ng ating right triangle but on the size of the angle itself. So, we have a names for these ratios. Tinatawag natin as the sine of theta, cosine of theta, tangent of theta, cosecant of theta, secant of theta, and cotangent of theta. Now, etong 6 na to, ito yung tinatawag natin as the trigonometric functions. Trigonometric functions of acute angles. We have an abbreviation for these trigonometric functions for sine of theta, cosine of theta, all the way to cotangent of theta. Ito po yan. So, sine theta, cosine theta, tangent theta, cosecant theta, secant theta, and cotangent theta. Okay, so paano ba sila, or paano ba natin sila mai-relate dun sa ratios natin kanina? Alin-alin ba dun yung mga trigonometric functions na yan? Now, we look at this right triangle. So, again, C is the hypotenuse, or let's write it na lang as, ayan, hype na lang, hypotenuse. Now, ang alam lang natin for B and A, ang tawag lang sa kanila natin kanina is legs lang. But, kung consider natin ito, if we consider this acute angle here, the angle theta, ang opposite niya is yung B. Ito. So, we call it as the opposite. And, we call A as the adjacent kasi siya yung katabi ng ating angle theta. Ito, itong side na to. Adjacent. If we rewrite those ratios, ang gagawin natin dyan, we have, for sine theta, we have the opposite B over C. Or, the opposite over hypotenuse. Next, for the cosine theta, we have the adjacent A, or the side A, over the hypotenuse C. Or simply, sulat na lang natin as adjacent over hypotenuse. Next, for tangent theta, we have opposite B over the adjacent A. Or simply, sulat na lang natin as the opposite over the adjacent. For cosecant theta naman, now, yung cosecant theta is the kabaliktaran ng sine theta. So, isulat na lang natin dito, we have C over B or the hypotenuse over opposite. And for the second theta, the reverse function or reverse trigonometric function of the cosecant or of the cosine theta. So, this is C over A and hypotenuse over adjacent. Ayan po siya. And lastly, for cotangent of theta or simply cotangent theta, ito po yung reverse of the trigonometric function tangent theta. So we have A over B or simply adjacent over the opposite. So ayan po yung kanilang mga value. Okay, kaya nga meron tayong tinatawag na acronym, yung one of the most famous acronyms, yung tinatawag natin as the SOHCA TOA. Okay? Yung SO na yan, sine, opposite, hypotenuse. Opposite, hypotenuse. Yung K naman, adjacent, eto, hypotenuse. So, para hindi na tayo malito, ang tatandaan lang natin lagi is yung acronym na SOHCA TOA. And for the tangent, we have the opposite, eto siya, over adjacent. Opposite over adjacent. Now, kailangan na lang natin tandaan na yung cosecant theta is the reverse function of sine theta. So, babaliktarin na lang natin itong dalawa na to. And secant theta is the reverse function of cosine theta. And finally, the cotangent theta is the reverse function of the tangent theta. So, this is the trigonometric functions of acute angles, or simply, we just call it as the basic trigonometric function. For example, number 1. So, para may apply natin kung paano ba nag-work yung trigonometric function na yun, let's take example number 1. So, determine the value of each of the 6 trigonometric functions of the angle theta if only 2 sides of the triangle are given. So, we draw the triangle. So, we draw the triangle first. This is our triangle. And this is a right triangle. Ito po yung ating theta, yung acute angle theta. Now, we have given 2 sides only. The adjacent, ito po yun, we have 3. Adjacent of angle theta. And the opposite of the angle theta, we have the value 4. If there's one value of side missing, we use the Pythagorean theorem. The C square is equal to A square plus B square. So, ang kulang sa atin is yung hypotenuse or yung C natin. Hindi po natin alam. So, we solve by using the Pythagorean theorem. So, C square na unknown is equal to, for example, this is our A and this is our B. We have A as 3 square plus B as 4 square. Now we solve. C square is equal to 3 square is equal to 9 plus 4 square is equal to 16. And we are solving for the value of C. C square is equal to 9 plus 16 is 25. And by calculating, solving only for C, we square both sides. So, para makancel yan. So, C now is equal to the square root of 25, which is 5. Alam na natin ngayon yung value ng C, which is 5. Ayan po siya. So, now, kompleto na yung ating values for each side ng right triangle natin. We can now solve for all the 6 trigonometric functions. Let's start first with the sine theta. Sine theta, we have opposite hypotenuse. We have 4 over 5. yan ang value ng sine theta natin. Opposite over hypotenuse. So, this is our sine theta. Next, for the cosine theta, SOHCA, TOA. So, sa ka natin, we have cosine adjacent over hypotenuse. Adjacent natin is 3 over the hypotenuse 5. Next, for tangent. Tangent theta, we have TOA. Opposite over adjacent. Opposite 4 over adjacent 3. And ito ang ating pangatlong trigonometric function. Next, for the cosecant theta, we have reverse lang ng sine theta. Ibig sabihin, pwede nating baliktarin na lang to. Ilalagay natin dito as 5 over 4. Next, for secant theta. Secant theta is a reverse function of cosine theta. So, therefore, we can write the value as 5 over 3 na lang. Galing dito. But, binaliktad lang natin. And finally, for cotangent theta, the reverse function of tangent theta, we can write the answer as 3 over 4. I'm sorry, this is cotangent theta. And finally, this is our 6 trigonometric functions values po nung ating example number 1. For sine theta, we have 4 over 5. For cosine theta, we have 3 over 5 all the way to cotangent theta as 3 over 4. So that's how we do example number 1. Next, we have example number 2. Problem. If theta is an acute angle and cosine theta is equal to 3 over 4, find the values of the trigonometric functions of theta. So, ang given na sa atin is already the cosine theta. So, ang hahanapin na lang natin is the 5 other trigonometric functions. So, given na sa atin na cosine theta over 3 is equal to 3 over 4. Now, hindi tayo binigyan ng mismong triangle. Ang binigay lang sa atin, yung theta is an acute angle theta. And we have cosine theta is equal to 3 over 4. Now, we do a right triangle or we create a right triangle. And ito yung theta natin as an acute angle. Now, asan ba dito yung cosine theta na yan? The cosine theta, we have adjacent over hypotenuse. So, by the acronym SOHCA TOA, para mas madali na lang natin tandaan. Adjacent natin ay 3. And yung hypotenuse natin ay 4. This is 3. And this is the hypotenuse. Ayan yung ating cosine theta. Now, we solve for this side kasi hindi natin alam. So, paano natin isi-solve? Again, whenever there's a missing side of a right triangle, we use the Pythagorean theorem. Consider this as B. B unknown. This is A. This is C. Now, C square by Pythagorean theorem is equal to A square plus B square. Now, solving for B, we have C square, 4 square is equal to 3 square plus B square. Solving for B only, lipat natin sa kabila itong 3 square. We have 4 square minus, magiging negative, nilipat sa kabila with transposition method. 3 square is equal to B square. Solving for B square, i-reverse natin yung equation. We have B square is equal to 4 square is equal to 16. And 3 square is 9. So, 16 minus 9, we have B square is equal to 7. But we are only solving for B, so square root ng both sides. Para makancel yung 2. So, B now is equal to square root of 7. Ito na po yung ating value ng isang side natin. And dahil alam na natin yung lahat ng value ng sides, pwede na nating malaman ngayon yung values ng 5 other trigonometric functions. Since we already know the cosine theta, let's start with sine theta to tangent theta, cosecant, secant, and cotangent theta. For sine theta, we have SO, or opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite over hypotenuse, we have square root of 7 over hypotenuse. This is our sine theta. For tangent theta, we have opposite over adjacent. The opposite of the acute angle theta ay B, or yung square root of 7 over 3. So this is our tangent theta. Now, for the cosecant theta, na reverse function of sine theta, so we can write this as 4 over square root of 7. Now, we should rationalize this one kasi dapat yung ating square root or yung radical natin ay nasa numerator. So, ang gagawin natin, i-rationalize natin yung ating denominator. So, paano yan? We multiply the numerator and the denominator by square root of 7 para mawala yung ating square root sa denominator. So, we have cosecant theta is equal to 4 times square root of 7 is simply 4 square root of 7. And dito naman, since square root of 7 multiplied to square root of 7, magiging 7 na lang ito kasi ang mangyayari dito is square root of 7 times 7 or magiging 7 square kasi yan. So, makakancel na to. Ang matitira lang sa atin is this 1. Now, next for secant theta. Na reverse function ng cosine theta. So, isulat na lang natin yung reverse ng 3 over 4 as 4 over 3. And for the last, the tangent or the cotangent theta. Okay? So, for cotangent theta, the reverse function of tangent theta, isulat na lang natin as reverse nitong part na to. 3 over square root of 7. Again, we have a radical on the denominator, so we rationalize the denominator. Multiply 2 square root of 7 over square root of 7 para makancel natin yung radical niya. So now, for cotangent theta, we have 3 square root of 7 over 7. Ito na po yung ating panghuling trigonometric function value. Next, we have example number 3. So, given that sine theta is equal to 1 over 3 and theta is an acute angle, find the exact value of each of the remaining 5 trigonometric functions of theta. Example number 3 is the same concept as example number 2. Kaya lang, in this problem, ang given sa atin na sine theta. So, ganun lang din ang gagawin. Sine theta is equal to 1 over 3. So, we create or we draw a right triangle here. This is a right triangle and theta as an acute angle. Now, we have given sine theta kasi. So, alam na natin, sa sine, opposite over hypotenuse. So, 1 is the opposite and 3 is the hypotenuse. So, alam na agad natin yung dalawang sides na yun. This is the opposite. Let's write it as B, 1, and the hypotenuse as 3, denoted as C. Now, again, hindi natin alam yung pangatlong side, so we use the Pythagorean theorem. We write this, or we denote this as A. So, by Pythagorean theorem, C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. Alam natin yung C, alam natin yung B. The unknown is the adjacent of the angle theta, yung A. So, C squared natin is 3. 3 squared is equal to A squared, unknown, plus B squared na 1. Solving for A. Lipat natin sa kabila yung 1 square. 3 square magiging negative 1 square is equal to A square. And then, 3 square is equal to 9. And 1 square is equal to 1. We have A square. 9 minus 1 is equal to 8. So, i-reverse natin yung equation. Dito na yung 8 and dito yung A square. And we solve for the value of A alone. Square root ng magkabilang side. Cancel ito, cancel ito. A is equal to square root of 8. Pero, pwede man natin i-simplify yung square root of 8 na yan. Paano? So we know that yung 8, ang factors ng 8, we have 4 times 2. Square root ng 4 is 2. Square root ng 2 is wala na. Square root of 2 na lang kabud siya. Kung hindi natin i-convert into decimal. We have a now is equal to square root ng 4, we have 2. And square root ng 2, square root ng 2 na lang siya mismo. Ito na po yung ating value ng a. And ngayong alam na natin lahat ng value ng lahat ng side ng right triangle natin, we can now find the values of the other 5 trigonometric functions. Alam na natin ang sine theta, we now go for the cosine theta. We have ka or adjacent over hypotenuse. Ang adjacent natin yung a, which is 2 square root of 2 over hypotenuse na 3. So this is cosine theta. For tangent theta, we have opposite adjacent. Opposite na 1 over 2 square root of 2. Again, we have radical in the denominator, so therefore, we need to rationalize the denominator. Multiply the numerator and the denominator by square root of 2. So tangent theta is equal to square root of 2 over 2, and square root of 2 times square root of 2, we have 2 na lang. 2. So tangent theta is equal to square root of 2 over 4. Ayan siya. Next, for cosecant theta. Yung cosecant theta natin, again, kabaliktaran or reverse function ng sine theta. So, isulat na lang natin dito as 3 over 1. Or simply, cosecant theta is equal to 3 na lang. Yan. And yung pang-apat na or pang-limang function natin, yung secant theta. Na reverse function ng ating cosine theta. So, we have 3 over 2 square root of 2. And we rationalize the denominator kasi may radical sa baba. Square root of 2 over square root of 2. Secant theta is now equal to 3 square root of 2 over 2 times 2. Dahil dito, pinag-multiply natin, magiging 2 na lang sa dahil makakancel yung radical na dyan. So, secant theta is now equal to 3 square root of 2 over 4. Ayan ang ating secant theta. And for the last one, we have cotangent theta na reverse function ng ating tangent theta. We have 4 over square root of 2. Again, we have radical on the denominator, so therefore, we should rationalize the denominator. We have square root of 2, multiply up and down, square root of 2. Cotangent theta is now equal to 4 square root of 2 over 2. This is now our value for the cotangent theta function. Our answer for cotangent theta, 4 square root of 2 over 2, pwede ba natin i-simplify? Pwede ba natin i-simplify as cotangent theta is equal to 4 divided by 2. Pag sinimplify natin yan, 2 na lang. So, cancel ito. This is 2 na lang. We have 2 square root of 2. Ayan. So, this is the answer for all the values of the trigonometric functions of our given triangle. Ito po. So, this is example number 3. Next, we have example number 4. So, for example number 4, we are asked to determine the values of the trigonometric functions that correspond to the angles 60 degrees, 30 degrees, and 45 degrees. Now, since wala tayong ibang binigay na triangle, so we will assume this is a right triangle, of course, and the acute angles 60 degrees, 30 degrees, and 45 degrees. Wala tayong ibang binigay na sides, na value ng sides or dimension. So, ang gagawin natin, we will assume ay a triangle. Now, for 60 degrees and 30 degrees, for 60 degrees and 30 degrees, we will assume an equilateral triangle. We have, ayan, this triangle. And syempre, to make it a right triangle, hatiin natin sa gitna. And we will assume a value of the sides. This is 2, 2, and 2. And dahil hinati natin sa gitna, 1 na lang ito. 1, 1. This is 60 degrees, 60 degrees, 60 degrees. So, ganyan ang equilateral triangle. And dahil hinati natin sa gitna, the value of this now is 30 degrees. Or we can now solve for the values of the trigonometric functions for 60 degrees and for 30 degrees. First, let's solve for the values of the trigonometric functions for the 60 degrees. For 60 degrees, these are triangle 1, 2, and the 60 degrees. Kaya lang, may kulang tayo na isang value ng side natin. Hindi natin alam itong opposite nung angle 60 natin. Again, if we have a missing value, we use the Pythagorean theorem. 2 as the hypotenuse, 2 square is equal to 1 square. And the missing value, let's say this is b, plus b square. Next, solving for b square, we have 2 square. Lipat natin yung 1 square sa kabila, maging negative 1 square is equal to b square. And 2 square minus 1 square is 3. Is equal to b square. Now, solving for the value of b alone, we have b square root of 3 na lang siya. So, alam na natin lahat ng value. We have the hypotenuse 2, the adjacent 1, and the opposite, we have square root of 3. We can now solve for the trigonometric function values. For sine theta, or sine 60 degrees, we have opposite hypotenuse. Opposite as square root of 3 and the hypotenuse 2. So this is the sine 60 degrees. For cosine 60 degrees, we have the value adjacent hypotenuse. Ang ating adjacent is equal to 1 over hypotenuse na 2. So this is our value for cosine 60. For tangent 60 naman, we have opposite, adjacent. The opposite is square root of 3. Ito yan, yung opposite natin. Over 1. Or simply, sulat na lang natin as square root of 3 na lang. Next, for cosecant 60. Na-reverse function ng sine 60. So, therefore, sulat na lang natin as kabaliktaran nitong part na to. We have 2 square root of 3. And by rationalizing, multiply the numerator and the denominator by square root of 3. Cosine 60 now is equal to 2 square root of 3 over 3 na lang. Yan ang ating cosine or cosecant 60 degrees. For secant is the reverse function of cosine. Therefore, i-reverse lang natin yung value. We have 2 over 1 or simply we have 2 na lang. Yan. And for the final value na inahanap natin, the value of the cotangent 60. For cotangent 60, the reverse function of the tangent 60, we have 1 over square root of 3. And by rationalizing, we multiply both the numerator and the denominator by square root of 3. So, cotangent 60 now is equal to square root of 3 over 3 na lang. This is the value for all the trigonometric functions ng angle 60 natin. For the value of the trigonometric functions of the angle 30 degrees. Now, may nabuo na tayo kaninang triangle, right triangle. Ito siya. This is 60. This is 30 degrees. Kaya lang, babaliktarin na lang natin. Okay? So, we have This is 30 degrees now. And ang value nito ay 2. This is 1. And this is square root of 3. Now, dahil alam na natin lahat ng sides, we can now solve or we can now find the value of the trigonometric functions for angle 30 degrees. For sine 30, opposite hypotenuse, we have 1 over 2. Simply, ito na po yung ating sine 30. Next, for cosine 30 degrees, we have adjacent hypotenuse. Adjacent na square root of 3, hypotenuse 2. Ito po ang ating cosine 30. For tangent 30 naman, we have opposite, adjacent. Opposite is equal to 1 and adjacent natin is equal to square root of 3. We have a radical on the denominator, so therefore, we should rationalize the denominator. And by rationalizing, we multiply the numerator and the denominator by the square root of 3 para makancel yung ating radical sa denominator. Tangent 30 now is equal to square root of 3 over 3 na lang. Ito po ang ating tangent 30 degrees. For cosecant 30 degrees, we have the reverse function ng sine 30, 2 na lang ito. Ayan. From here. Next, secant 30 degrees. The reverse function of the cosine 30. So, ito, gawin na lang natin dito. Baliktarin na lang natin. We have 2 square root of 3. But, we should rationalize square root of 3 over square root of 3 para makancel ito. We now have secant 30 degrees is equal to 2 square root of 3 over 3. Ito po ang ating secant 30. And for the last trigonometric function value for cotangent 30 degrees, the reverse function of ito, yan, 3 over square root of 3. We should rationalize. Ayan, so that we can cancel the radical. Cotangent 30 degrees is now equal to 3 square root of 3 over 3 na lang. And then, pwede pa natin i-cancel itong part na ito kasi pareho lang naman siya. 3 over 3 is equal to 1. So now, the final answer for cotangent 30 degrees is simply square root of 3 na lang. This is the 6 values of the trigonometric functions of angle 30 degrees. And for the last angle, for example number 4, for angle 45 degrees. For 45 degrees. Now, iba ang way ng pag-solve natin dito like 60 degrees and 30 degrees. For 45 degrees, we assume an isosceles triangle. Pag sinabi nating isosceles triangle, 2 sides lang yung equal. Kanina sa equilateral triangle, all sides are equal. And now we have the isosceles triangle. Ayan, this is right triangle. This is equal, itong dalawa na to. Now, we assume this side is equal to 1. This side is equal to 1. And solving for the hypotenuse, we have a c square by Pythagorean theorem. 1 square plus 1 square, we have c square is equal to 1 square is equal to 1 plus 1 square is equal to 1. 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. And finally, we have c as square root of 2. Ayan yung ating value ng hypotenuse. Alam na natin lahat ng values ng lahat ng sides of our right triangle, the isosceles triangle, for 45 degrees. We can now solve or we can now find the values of all the trigonometric functions. So for sine 45 degrees, opposite over hypotenuse. So, opposite ay 1. Ang hypotenuse natin ay square root of 2. And by rationalizing, square root of 2 over square root of 2, para makancel yun, we now have sine 45 degrees is equal to square root of 2 over 2 na lang. This is sine 45 degrees. For cosine 45 degrees. Ang ating answer, we have adjacent hypotenuse 1 over square root of 2. Now, kung mapapansin natin, pareho lang sila ng sine 45. So, ang ilagay na lang din natin dito is square root of 2 over 2. Ayan po siya. For tangent theta, or tangent 45 degrees. Opposite over adjacent. Ang opposite natin ay 1. Ang adjacent natin ay 1 din. So, therefore, the answer is simply 1 lang. Ayan. For cosecant 45 degrees. Ayan. Cosecant, the reverse function of sine 45. So, isulat na lang natin. Ito na lang agad ang ilagay natin. We have square root of 2 over 1. Or simply, cosecant 45 degrees is simply 2 na lang. Square root of 2. Ayan. Next, for secant. Secant theta, or secant 45 degrees, the reverse function of cosine. Ito lang din ang ilagay natin. Baliktarin na lang natin. We have square root of 2 over 1, or simply, secant 45 degrees is equal to square root of 2 na lang. And for the last value ng trigonometric function natin, yung cotangent 45. Cotangent 45, the reverse function of that tangent 45 degrees, we have 1. Ayan lang siya. So, this is the 6 values of the 6 trigonometric functions for the angle 45 degrees. And this is our example number 4. Itong sinolve natin na angle 60 degrees, 30 degrees, and 45 degrees, those angles are called the special angles. Now, to make it easier for you guys, this is the table ng lahat ng values ng trigonometric function natin from 0, 30, 45, all the way to 360 degrees. These are all the special angles and all the quadrantal angles. So, para hindi na tayo mag-solve ng isa-isa, eto na po siya. From all the previous examples natin na sinolve kanina, lahat yun ginamitan natin ng triangular approach. Bakit triangular approach? Kasi, every time we read the problem, we draw a triangle, and whenever there's a missing side, we use Pythagorean theorem para kumpletuhin lahat ng sides. And then, pag kumpleto na, we then solve for all the values of the trigonometric functions of the sine, cosine, tangent, cotangent, cosecant, and the secant theta. Now, meron tayong tinatawag na circular approach of solving the values of the trigonometric functions. We call it as the unit circle. A circle is defined as a set of points equidistant from a fixed point within called the center. It is represented by the equation x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. So, if you can observe, hawig lang din siya ng Pythagorean theorem. Where, for a unit circle, the radius is 1. Kapag gagamit tayo ng unit circle, i-consider natin, or ang ilalagay natin na value ng radius is exactly 1 lang. And the center is at the origin O, 0, 0, center ng ating coordinate plane. Now, we see this figure, the circle, and this is our x and y. Ayan. Now, initially, this point, this is our radius, this is our center O, this is center O with 0, 0. And initially, we have the point here na 1, and ang y natin is 0 kasi nandito siya. Now, kung gagawa tayo ng angle, let's say this is our angle, angle theta, and ang ating point, coordinate point, for that angle is, eto, we have P of point, ayan, x, y pa din. So, This is how the unit circle works. Gagamit tayo ng unit circle to calculate the trigonometric functions natin. So, para mas maintindihan, we take example number 5. Now, for example number 5, determine the coordinates of P of 2 pi over 3. Now, pag nakita natin yung 2 pi over 3, maaaring malito na tayo agad, but this is just an example of another angle. So, para mas madali sa paningin natin, we convert 2 pi over 3 into degrees. So, 2 pi over 3 to degrees, we use the conversion factor 180 degrees over pi, so that we can cancel the pi. And 2 over 3 times 180 is equal to 120 degrees. So, ibig sabihin, ang hinahanap sa atin yung coordinate points ng P of 120 degrees. Whenever we are asked to find the coordinates ng angle natin using the unit circle or using the circular approach, we can rewrite this as x and y. Yan ang hinahanap sa atin yung coordinates ng angle natin. So, yung x na yan, ang value niyan ay yung cosine theta, yung angle. And yung y natin is the sine theta. So, if we are rewriting this is now P cosine theta, comma, sine theta. And since we are given an angle of 120 degrees or 2 pi over 3 radians, yun ang hahanapin natin. We have P cosine 120 degrees, sine 120 degrees. And since binigay ko na sa inyo kanina yung isang buong table ng lahat ng special and quadrantal angles natin, hindi na natin kailangan i-solve. Hanapin na lang natin doon. So, ang value ng ating cosine 120 degrees, we have negative 1/2 from the table na already solved na for you. And for sine 120, we have square root of 3 over 2. So, this is the coordinates of the angle 120 degrees. Kung i-drawing natin yan for a unit circle, we have this figure. This is the center O. This is the initial side of the angle. And so, mag-rotate tayo counterclockwise hanggang dito, assuming ito ang ating 120 degrees. And ito, this is the P. Ito yung coordinates na hinahanap natin. Yung negative 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. Ito po yan. Ayan yung ating coordinate. Now, if we will notice, cosine 120 degrees is equal to negative 1/2. Bakit negative? And bakit yung sine 120 natin is positive? So, 120 degree angle ay nasa quadrant 2. Ayan. And this is the coordinates of the angle 120 degrees. Ito po siya. Negative 1/2 kasi yung ating cosine or yung ating x, this is our x, ito, ay nasa quadrant 2 na, negative na siya talaga. Ito yung negative x-axis natin. This is a positive. And yung ating sine 120, nasa positive y-axis pa din. Therefore, negative 1/2 and square root of 3 over 2 ang coordinates ng angle 120 natin. And that's example number 5. Next, we have example number 6. Determine the coordinates again. This time, the angle 5 pi over 4. From the table kanina, 5 pi over 4 is equal to 225 degrees. Ang hinahanap sa atin is the coordinates of 225 degrees. Again, the coordinates is x and y. We have x and y. And x is the cosine of 225 degrees and y is the sine of 225 degrees. From the table, the value of cosine 225 degrees, we have negative square root of 2 over 2. And then, the value of sine 225 degrees naman, we have negative square root 2 over 2 pa din. Ito ay galing dun sa table na na-solve na po and na-tabulate na. So, this is the coordinates of the angle 5 pi over 4 or the angle 225 degrees. So, bakit parehong negative? We draw the unit circle ulit. Ito ang ating unit circle. This is the origin. And this is the initial side. So, 225, malamang lalampas yan ng 180. So, this one, hanggang dito, hanggang dyan. Assuming this is the exact place. So, alam na natin kung bakit parehong negative. Dahil nasa quadrant 3 po yung ating angle 225 degrees. Negative x-axis, ayan, and negative y-axis. Ayan, so, this is the answer for example number 6, determining the coordinates of the angle 5 pi over 4. Para hindi na ulit tayo mahirapan, ito na yung ating unit circle for all the special and quadrantal angles. Lahat yan, ito na yung ating position with all the corresponding signs, positive or negative, for 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, all the way to the full rotation 360 degrees. What if we are asked to find the values of the trigonometric functions, or in other terms, in unit circle, the circular functions given only the coordinates? Now, let's take example number 7. So, determine the circular functions. Yung circular functions na yan yung values ng trigonometric function of the coordinate 5 and negative 12. So, before finding the functions or the value of the functions, we should know first kung nasaang quadrant ba ito ng unit circle natin. So, let's draw the circle. Ayan. The origin O. Alam na natin na itong 5 is the X. And itong negative 12 is the Y. So, we have positive X, positive Y. Malamang, nandito siya sa part na ito. Ito. And we have negative Y, negative 12. So, nasa baba siya. Therefore, yung ating coordinate point na 5 and negative 12 ay nasa quadrant 4. Andito yung kanyang position. So, nandito sa gawin na yan. Ayan. This is the coordinate point 5 and negative 12. Now, solving for the values of the circular function or the trigonometric function, yung sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, and the cotangent theta. To solve for that, dapat alam muna natin yung r square. So, similar like Pythagorean theorem, in unit circle or the circular approach, we have x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared, same as the Pythagorean theorem. Now, alam natin ang x, alam natin ang y, we now solve for the r squared. Lagay natin dito. So, r squared is equal to 5 squared plus negative 12 squared. By solving, r squared is equal to 25 plus negative 12 raised to 2 is equal to 144. And r squared now is equal to 125 plus 44 is equal to 169. And solving for the r alone, the hypotenuse, we have, or the radius, we have square root of 169, the exact value of 13. Now, hindi pa yun ang final answer natin. So, ngayon, alam na natin yung hypotenuse and yung dalawang sides na 5, negative 12, hypotenuse na 13. We can now find the values of the circular functions given the coordinate point. So, for cosine theta, we have adjacent over hypotenuse. Ang adjacent natin dito is yung 5. Ito, kasi ito yung ating theta. this is the hypotenuse. Adjacent, opposite, sorry, this is the opposite, this is the hypotenuse. Adjacent is 5, and ang hypotenuse natin is that 13. Ito ang ating cosine theta. For sine theta, we have opposite hypotenuse, negative 12 over 13. For tangent theta, we have opposite adjacent na negative 12 over 5. Now, for the second theta, ito. Second theta, we have second theta is the reverse function of the cosine theta. So we have 13 here over 5. Ayan. And we have cosecant, the reverse function of sine. Baliktarin lang natin ito. 13 over 12 negative. For the last value na kailangan natin, the cotangent theta, the reverse function of this, baliktarin lang natin, we have 5 over 12 negative. So, eto na po yung ating circular functions given only the coordinate of 5 and negative 12. So, this is our example number 7. And for the final example for this tutorial video, we have example number 8. Determine the circular functions of the coordinate negative 3 and 3 square root of 3. Now, alamin muna natin kung nasaang quadrant ba ng unit circle ang coordinate point na ito. So, this is our unit circle, region O. We have this x and y. Ang x natin ay negative 3. Therefore, nandito siya. Dito tayo magpa-plot. And we have positive y. 3 squared of 3. Ito siya. So, meaning, itong coordinate point natin ito ay located sa quadrant 2. So, nandito siya sa gawin na dyan. Assuming this is the position, ito po yung ating point. We have point, negative 3, 3 squared of 3. Solving for the hypotenuse. Say, ito siya. By the circular or similar to Pythagorean theorem, we have the equation of the circle x square plus y square is equal to r square. So, solve natin itong radius niya. So, r square is equal to negative 3 square plus 3 squared of 3 square. So, r square is equal to 9. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Plus 3 square is 9 also. And 3. Square root of 3 is, square root of 3 raised to 2 is simply 3 na lang po siya. So, we have r square is equal to 9 plus 9 times 3 na 27. And r square is equal to 9 plus 27, we have 36. And square root of 36, r now is equal to 6. Ito po ang ating value ng r. So, alam na natin yung dalawang side and alam na natin yung hypotenuse. We can now solve for all the values of the circular functions. Assuming this is the angle theta. Now, for sine theta, we have 3 square root of 3. Ito yan. Over the hypotenuse na 6. So, by simplifying, 3 over 6 ay 1/2. So, sine theta natin is equal to, cancel yan, cancel, and this is 2. Square root of 3 over 2 na lang. That's our sine theta. For cosine theta is equal to adjacent hypotenuse. Ang adjacent natin ay negative 3 over 6. Or by simplifying, we have cosine theta is equal to negative 1/2. For tangent theta, we have opposite over adjacent. The opposite is 3 square root of 3 over negative 3. So, cancel. Ang sagot na lang natin, we have tangent theta is equal to negative square root of 3. Now, for cosecant theta, we have this is the reverse function again of the sine theta. We have 2 na lang over square root of 3. And by rationalizing the denominator, square root of 3, square root of 3, we now have the final answer for cosecant theta na 2 square root of 3 over 3 na lang. So, this is cosecant theta. And for secant theta, we have reverse ng cosine theta, negative 2 over 1 or simply negative 2 na lang po siya. Ito po ang ating secant theta. And finally, for cotangent theta, we have the reverse of the tangent theta, negative 1 over square root of 3. And by rationalizing the denominator, we have cotangent theta is equal to negative square root of 3 over 3 na lang. This is the values of the circular functions of the coordinate negative 3 and 3 square root of 3. So that's our example number 8. And that's it for today's video, guys. On the next tutorial, we are going to discuss the uses and operations of the different trigonometric identities. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.